of the Union for the Mediterranean for more than 5 years, which is a perfect place, a perfect post to have a global vision of the Mediterranean. So, Mr. Sichelmasi, do you have more positive words than the words who are used today in the headlines to describe the Mediterranean, to talk about the southern Mediterranean?
Thank you, Mr. Claret, and good afternoon to everybody, colleagues, panelists, and the audience. First of all, I would like to really congratulate the organizers for having put the Southern Mediterranean as one of the panels of this fantastic Bled Strategic Forum. So congratulations to the organizers and to the Slovenian authorities, because I believe that it is an essential dimension. I know that one of the main focus of this forum has been to contribute to the overall thinking about the future of Europe, essentially with regards to the new realities in the region and in the world. Among these new realities, there is also the Mediterranean dimension, so it was really good to have it on the agenda of our discussions. So thank you again for Slovenia and for the organizers. And by the way, just to complete what you said, I strongly believe that Slovenia is a Mediterranean country and is a very active member of the Union for the Mediterranean. Now, yes, we are collectively facing challenges, risks, and threats, all of which you can put within the framework of what you can call the negative agenda. This negative agenda has to be dealt with seriously, with determination. The threats, we know them. They knock at our door on a daily basis, and sometimes a very human level. And they have, unfortunately, been increasing, and we know that we have to mobilize our efforts toward that. But I do want to make a point that I take out from observations that I have after consultations and discussions across the region. Let's never forget that in front of facing terrorism, radicalism, security challenges, illegal migration, and we can go on for the whole list of the challenges and threats and risks, we stand on the same side. There's no north and south of the Mediterranean. There's only humanity versus inhumanity. And I think this has to be made very strongly in order to enhance our cooperation, our partnership against these challenges and against these threats. But beyond that, after having made this point that I wanted to make very strongly, because I do believe that we have to realize that we stand on the same side with shared values, facing together these threats that we have to face collectively. But in front of this, let us not forget also that we have to complete our vision and indeed our action with a positive agenda, because it is unfair for millions of young people, women, civil society representatives from across the region to be limited to this negativity. And on the long term, the asset of our region is to build on common interests, common actions on the level of all that is uniting us and everything that is the best asset of the region: youth, women, academics, civil society organizations, private sector organizations. And this is what the Union for the Mediterranean, with its network of partners, be it governments, stakeholders, other organizations, is working hard to continuously, progressively, pragmatically, because I take your word, Andre, on the pragmatic approach, building and strengthening this positive agenda. It is necessary, and I believe this would be the right track, not, of course, forgetting the other challenges that we have in the region, but building also on our assets, and they are very numerous, and a lot of people, I'm sure, within the panel will raise this issue as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sijil-Massim. Malta is at the very center of the Mediterranean, and this is not only a geographic statement, it's a political statement, because it has been very much involved in the Barcelona process since 1995. I remember the leading role of Guido de Marco in Barcelona at that time. No? And we have Mr. Carmelo Abella, the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Malta here, from Malta, from your position at the center of the Mediterranean, in the middle of the south and the north and east and west. Can you help us to define the current Mediterranean political momentum, please?
So good afternoon to all, and thank you for the invitation. It's my first time at this forum, and it's a fantastic opportunity to exchange views and also meet very interesting people. And this is also an interesting topic. It's an interesting topic not only for those who geographically are close to the Mediterranean, but it should be an interesting topic on everyone's agenda, because in some way or another, the effects of what's happening in the Mediterranean, be it north, be it south, is having an impact on most of the countries irrespective of the region. So Malta was the first to advocate at an OSCE meeting in mid-70s that there will be no peace and security in Europe unless there is peace and security in the Mediterranean. And I think it's very true also nowadays. So the challenges that we have, irrespective whether we call them problems, these are our challenges, but they can be also an opportunity for all of us to progress and make something positive out of these challenges. So we know what the situation is when it comes to the southern neighborhood of the European Union. The European Union is doing what it can to make progress when it comes to development, and we should not only focus on aid. Aid maybe is the short term that is required to have people in Africa at least have a better life today, but development is the key to have a better future. So we need to invest more in Africa, not only keeping in mind the issue of migration, which was already mentioned, and it's an issue that is affecting most member states, either directly or indirectly. Here in this panel we have Greece, we have Italy, we have Malta, 3 member states, 3 frontliners that we have been dealing with the issue of migration for many, many years. We have been also advocating that this is not an issue just for member states that happen to be at the front line, at the border of the European Union, but it should be an issue for all EU member states. But likewise, the challenges that we are experiencing in the Mediterranean is also a challenge for all of us to be involved with. To start with, we have Libya. I think Libya is now the most discussed, but we have to pay attention also to other countries in the region that at one point or another things might escalate. We hope not, but we have to work with all these countries. But we used to talk about the Arab Spring. Now it's for each and every one of us to make our own assessment of the Arab Spring. But I think we should think as international community whether we were successful with what we did in Libya, for example, and the aftermath of the Gaddafi regime, whether we are doing the right thing today to have a better future tomorrow. And I think that first and foremost, it's up to the Libyans to decide their own future, to solve their own problems. But the international community, being the EU, be it individual countries that are taking an active role in Libya, we need to help the Libyan authorities to have discussions and come out with solutions for the challenges that they are facing. So I think that this should be our role, together with, of course, the UN representative, that we help the Libyan authorities to have these discussions to solve their own issues and problems, and we will be there to support. So it's not a question of us imposing on them, be it our culture, be it our democracy, but it's helping them to arrive little by little towards these goals and values. So I think that the challenges are quite a few, and you mentioned in your intervention an extensive list of these challenges, but we should be in this together. So irrespective of whether we are close to the Mediterranean, it's an issue for all of us to tackle together. We are far better off together rather than divided. And also this issue of the Mediterranean region is one of those issues that we need to be focused, and we need to be also in this together to help that the current situation in the Mediterranean, especially in the southern part of the Mediterranean, is approached in a correct way.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. You talk about values and about civil society, and we have with us an Egyptian woman. She works in a consultancy firm in Cairo and Munich, and she comes from a country, Egypt, which is essential for the Middle East and for the Mediterranean, a country where the civil society played an important, crucial role in the last years. No? And Sarah Risk, she knows Egyptian civil society. So can you tell us about the role of the civil society today, after what happened in Egypt, after the revolution, the restoration, and the situation which is now in Egypt not easy for civil society? Is still civil society able to contribute to shape the future of Egypt?
Thank you, Mr. Claret. Thank you for the organizers for inviting me. This is the first time I participate in the Bled Strategic Forum, so it's a particular pleasure to be here. Well, I come here bearing, obviously not the opinions and the position of the Egyptian, the official Egyptian perspective, but my own perspective as someone who has participated and observed the events over the past years. And there have been obviously a lot of transformations and developments in Egypt over the past years. Since 2011, Egypt has been in a state of constant transformation. It has undergone extensive political and economic changes. And just to give you, or those of you who are not so familiar with the context, some background, since 2011, so in the past 6 years, the government has changed hands about 4 times. So after the ouster of Mubarak in 2011, the Supreme Council for Armed Forces took over power. Then former President Mohammed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood was in power from the mid of 2012 until the mid of 2013. After mass protests in the summer of 2013, there was an interim government taking power for some time under the leadership of Adil Mansour until the current president was elected, Mr. Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, in May 2014. And in this time, Egypt has adopted 3 new constitutions. So you can see the extent of change that has been taking place. Egypt is in a state of transition. And as history shows, transitional phases where building as stable social and economic and political order is in progress is a long process that is not completed within a few years. And a crucial part of this process is civil society. And by civil society, I mean the broad range of organized groups and institutions that are independent, that are voluntary, to some extent also self-generating and self-reliant. And this includes not only NGOs, but also think tanks, universities, independent media, and social and religious groups. Egypt has had a mixed experience with civil society since the Arab Spring. after January 2011 and the revolution, there has been a period of openness and expansion. In 2011, the number of registered civil society organizations reached 30,000. These were organizations working in different fields, but primarily in providing public services, social services in areas of welfare, education and health, and so on. And after the 30-year-old emergency law was lifted, there was, of course, opening of the door for more political activity, so there was more civil society activity in the political area as well. And organizations have played a very important role in that time, chronicling the progress that was being achieved, highlighting problems, providing legal assistance where needed, and filling the gaps that were created by the rapid restructuring of state organizations. However, this was also a time of political instability and economic downturn and terror threats, not the least. So security and stability were the obvious immediate goals. Come to this were concerns about groups emerging that are aiming to overthrow the political order and foreign meddling with internal affairs that could be done through the medium of civil society organizations. And more generally, NGOs who fostered some sort of public controversies or public dissent were viewed with suspicion. So for these reasons, Egyptian civil society has come under more and more scrutiny and control by the states, and efforts to regulate the work of civil society were put in place primarily in the form of laws and institutional oversight and the like. But while security and stability is the obvious immediate goal, long-term, the building of long-term political stability and economic stability is the actual goal. And civil society is indispensable to this goal because democracies are essentially, at the end of the day, built on foundations, institutions with foundations in society. The protection of a democracy is not the legal constitution of 2012 or 2014, but it is citizens adopting and being committed to the values of democracy. And in countries where a transitional phase is underway, and in countries especially without an infrastructure, an old democratic political infrastructure, an important role of civil society is to mediate between the citizen and the government. And civil society groups do an important work here by lobbying for reforms and also by giving citizens a chance and an opportunity to participate in the public discourse that otherwise they would not have. Yesterday we talked a lot about young people participating in politics and what are possible entry points for the young in the world of politics, and I think that civil society is an excellent, or can be an excellent entry point for young people wishing to engage more in the public life. In Egypt, we have about 38% of the entire population between the ages of 24 and 54, and another 19% between 14 and 24. So you will see this is a huge political energy potential that can be used and channeled. And as I said, there probably is no better platform than civil society for this. But civil society is not only political organizations, it is also the organizations providing important services where needed or addressing the needs of underrepresented groups. This is especially important in a country like Egypt with centralized government and governance. So organizations working in remote areas or working on specific problems in remote areas are very important, and the government has relied on them in the past for helping out. So to exploit the full potential of civil society, I think there's, it could be helpful for Egypt to partner with its European neighbors in the context maybe of the European neighborhood policy, that this can be used as a forum to bring together civil society actors and government actors to exchange ideas about legal framework, oversight, and other things. This is obviously one idea of many, but the point is that civil society can play a positive and important role in the transformation in Egypt, and I think there's a lot of potential and an opportunity that the government and its Mediterranean and European neighbors can and should use.
Thank you very much, Sarah, from this insight about the role of civil society in the region and in Egypt in particular. During my mandate in the Annaline Foundation, I had the opportunity to go to Greece many times, because Greece is another crucial country in the business of promoting dialogue between the two shores. No? And I know that Greeks used to say that the country is now at the center of what they call a triangle of instability, a triangle between three war zones: Ukraine, Libya, and Syria. And we have with us Terence Nikolaos, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Nikolaos, what should be done to promote stability in this triangle, and what your country can do in order to stabilize it and to promote peace?
First of all, thank you for realizing that we are in the middle of a triangle and stabilized regions. This is very important for us. Second, you have to take into your account that we are suffering from 7 years austerity, which also affects the strengthening of our people. Third, because I don't want to be the heretic, but I have to say things which are based on history. Mediterranean is, no doubt, the most historic sea. The most historic sea. It has created the greatest civilizations. The Greek, the Egyptians, the Roman, and now it has turned into the Sea of Nightmare. It's a thriller. And as you probably know, everything started after the famous Arabic Spring, which failed dramatically, with a big cost for all the regional countries. I want to start from Egypt, which we have to encourage, to work with Egypt, because they are a very, very, very important partner into the stabilization of the area. And because you asked for a solution, yes, we have to talk. Talk, countries, people, politicians, and with the Greeks, with the trilateral meetings, Greece, Cyprus, Israel, Greece, Cyprus, Egypt. And I want to underline that I have a tremendous cooperation with the Egyptian government, especially with the Minister of Diaspora and Migration, Nabila Macron. A diplomat by career, but she's a minister, great one. But what can we do? What can we do when we have a war on the other side, Syria? What can we do when you have regional neighbors threatening the European Union that if they don't give the visa to them, they will release 3 million migrants based on their solid? And you probably know that if this will happen, they will pass through Greece. Greece, with close frontiers from the neighbor countries. So I should say, my friend, because I used to be for 45 years a journalist, and I want to face the reality. I should say that the biggest problem right now in the area is the problem of the migration, of the illegal migration, of the refugees problem. And European Union, what's the role in this? Okay, I should say that we are two countries, Italy and Greece, probably Malta as well, against all the other European countries. We are the gates of the importing of the migrants from the other end of the sea. And what help do we get? We have a commissioner who's Greek, Commissioner Avramopoulos. He's doing his very, very best. He's trying to do his very, very best. But you see that European countries, especially the central ones, they're raising fences. And we have a very peculiar situation. Canada is building bridges for humanity. Mr. Trudeau fulfilled his commitment. He said I will receive 42,000 refugees, and he did it. 42,000 refugees from Syria. Tell me, the commitment of our European partners. Canada is building bridges. They are raising fences. Dear friends and dear colleagues, it's not only the migrant situation, the migration situation. It's also the instability which you can see in a lot of countries in this area. It's Libya. I call it the virus in policy, the virus in the Mediterranean area. The Syria issue will not be solved unless the war stops. And there are two superpowers, USA and Russia, involved there, along with the neighbor Turks. But nevertheless, hope dies last. And I can assure you that we're trying, via our bilateral, trilateral, and worldwide relations, to make the Mediterranean area, along with the European Union, the area of stability. And I should say that in this case, talking about the soft security issues, we are trying to use youth, education, reinforcing human capital through ensuring opportunities for all, women empowerment, tourism, intercultural and interfaith dialogue. All this, it has to be considered as elements of making the Mediterranean area peaceful. So, I think that I gave you enough, as what we say in Greece, food to continue the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very
But
much.
my Italian colleague, I think he will have more to say about something which is not fair for Greece and Italy. The Dublin II treatment, which has to do, is dealing with the migration problem.
Thank you very much, Minister. We will have the opportunity to come back to the migration issue, which is crucial in the current times. No? But you raised the question of Syria, which is, let me say, the mother of all our problems and threats in the last 5 years at least. No? And we have an expert on Syria coming from Japan, which is not very usual, if I may say, from the University of Kyoto, Mr. Masanori Naito. Tell us, please, Mr. Naito, what can we expect after those 5 years of war, and is it possible to imagine in the near future a peaceful and reunited Syria back to the Euromed partnership?
I am from Japan. Maybe it's strange for you. Why? I was staying 2 years in Damascus when I was the PhD candidate student. But because of my article, the father Assad regime threatened me, don't come again. Oh, I had to abandon my study about Syria. Then I changed my field to Turkey. The beginning of 1990s, there was no academic freedom in Turkey. Then I changed my field again to the European countries, and I've conducted my own studies about the comparative studies of the Muslim immigrant in Europe, among the Germany, Netherlands, France, and other countries. Yes. So, rather my old experience in Syria. But of course, I have been watching the situation of Syria. So tentatively, I can say the guarantor state system is only the solution. For the Assad regime, yes, Russia is backing, and the Iranian government also backing. We cannot say that stop it and withdraw from Syria. It is impossible. For the other Sunni groups, including some jihadist groups, yes, I'm not sure, but Turkey is one of the biggest supporter for them, but excluding Daesh, Islamic State, and Al-Qaeda. And for Kurdish, oh my God. The Kurdish forces in Syria is the ultra-radical leftist communist group. And which country is now supporting them? United States and its allies. Yes, maybe that it will be successful to defeat Daesh, Islamic State, from Raqqa, as well as they did already in Mosul. But, of course, Kurdish forces expect their independence or autonomous territory. So, but my personal opinion, I don't want to see any more border in the Middle East. No border. If another border is created, of course, that means that this brutal treatment of each other and disastrous conflict will occur again. But of course, for the United Nations to recognize such the division by the guarantor state system is not favorable. So finally, I must tell you, to be fair, don't use the double standard for the people outside you. This is the very, only I want to add one thing, that since yesterday, many panelists and leaders said that they talked about the Turkey's accession talks also. Yes, there are plenty of the difficulties now. But please remember that 10 years ago, December 2006, the European Union suddenly suspended the accession talks with Turkey. Yes, before that, the French Foreign Minister, Dominique de Villepin, raised a new question. Yes, of course there's the historical background, but Turkey did not recognize the Republic of Cyprus. Yeah, it's true. Then Angela Merkel, Chancellor Merkel, raised a new question. Oh, Turkey should be remained as the privileged partnership with European Union. But what is the privileged partnership? There is no such a status. If Turkey accepted, maybe that a new page in the acquis communautaire was added. But of course, Turkey refused. Then now, plenty of the problems. At least all the member states of the European Union and European societies should reconsider their own past for the treatment with other culture, other civilizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As you can see, there's no way to avoid Turkey in the panels of this Bled forum, which is a crucial issue also for the Mediterranean dialogue, of course. And we have here a journalist, Michael Martens, He's a journalist at the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, and he's covering, among other countries, Turkey. So, Mr. Martens, from your experience as a journalist, what is and what will be the role of Turkey in the region in the coming years after what happened in Turkey in the last months, please?
Thank you very much for this introduction. I'm very glad that we have a gentleman from Greece here today, because actually what I would have to say, what I want to say will end in a question, and he would be perfect to answer it. I for sure wouldn't be. Those of you who have already been here yesterday have probably all heard what Mr. Mevlüt Çavuşoğlu, the Foreign Minister of Turkey, has to say. And I dare to say that probably most people will not disagree with me when I say that the European-Turkish relations are at an all-time low, which unfortunately especially goes for the bilateral Turkish-German, Turkish-Dutch, Turkish-Swedish, and Turkish-Austrian relations, whereas Turkish-Greek relations are always under a certain pressure for obvious reasons. What I would like to point your attention to, and what is something that I would be very interested to hear how this is being seen in Greece, is what I would call, and what others before me have called, the gradual militarization of Turkish foreign policy. Others also phrase it the gradual shift of a soft power approach to a hard power approach from Ankara. When AK Party, the Turkish governing party, took power in 2003, for the first time after, like the first 5, 6, 7, I would say up to 10 years, it has very often been praised for its soft power approach, especially in the Balkans. I know Slovenia is not part of the Balkans, but especially south from here. They have always been praised for example, these soap operas that are very popular in Bosnia, in Serbia, in Bulgaria, Suleiman Magnificent and others, that somehow portrayed Turkey in a very positive way, with again a soft power approach, culture and so on. TIKA, the Turkish agency, has been reconstructing a lot of historical monuments in the Balkans, for example, the famous bridge over the Drina, which most of you might know from the novel of Ivo Andrić, who won the Nobel Prize in '61, which was erected in Ottoman times, has been reconstructed with Turkish help, and so on. So that was a very positive approach. When we look at the latest 2 or 3 years, however, we can notice an additional element in Turkish policy, and this is, as I mentioned before, what I would call the gradual militarization of Turkey's approach. As we speak right now, Turkey is about to open, or maybe I haven't followed the news the last 2 days in this respect, it already has opened its first military base in Africa, in Mogadishu, Somalia. Turkey has a very serious approach towards Somalia. It's the only European country which has a functioning embassy in Mogadishu. For an example, Germany doesn't have an embassy anymore since 1989, and this goes similar for, I guess, all other European countries. Turkish Airlines is the only airline that is regularly flying to Mogadishu on a daily basis. The only non-African airlines, I mean. And this new camp, this new military base that has been opened in Mogadishu is supposed to train Somalia soldiers of the Somalia army in its fight against the Al-Shabaab militia, but it is also open, according to sources from the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to other Eastern African armies to be trained there. And the Turkish ambassador in Mogadishu had made it very clear that this is a long-term approach. Turkey comes not to leave after a while, they come there also militarily to stay. Turkey, you know, that has another base in Qatar. Turkey has informal bases in northern Syria to fight Kurdish militia and in northern Syria. I mean, to train local Arab groups to fight Kurdish militia. By the way, about the Kurdish autonomy, I don't really see how Kurdish autonomy in northern Syria would automatically mean erecting new borders. If, I admit it's a big if, but if Kurdish autonomy in northern Syria could function within a functioning federal Syrian state, I don't see what's the problem with it. But again, I admit this is a very, very big if right now. There are only ifs, I guess, in Syria right now. But basically what you can see is that the Turkish army, or what's left of it right now, is playing a bigger role in how Ankara pursues its foreign policy aims. Domestically, it is also a way of Erdogan to reconcile what is left of the Turkish army after the mass purges that have occurred since the coup attempt of July 2016. And I would find it interesting if we have the time, or maybe after this debate, unfortunately we have to leave at 2 o'clock sharp, to hear how this approach is being seen in Greece. Do you feel more threatened, or do you think we are used to this? This has been what we live with the last 40 years. Also keeping in mind that the Turkish defense industry is systematically strengthened, and that President Tayyip Erdogan recently has announced that Turkey wants to build its own aircraft carrier. Now I hear from experts that they are far from the capability of doing this, but at least it's a goal, and Turkey having its own aircraft carrier, of course, imagine this would really enhance or upgrade its military capabilities very much. So this is more like food for thought, and if someone would like to answer it, I'd be very happy.
Thank you very much. I will give 2 minutes, Minister, to reply to the question.
I need one. I should say that we're the first country, after what happened last year, to support the democratic elected government of Turkey, despite our problems. Second, we want to have a peace neighbor relations with Turkey. It's not up to us, it's up to them. They're very nervous the last 1 year. But although we're still talking, we're talking with them, we're trying to find what connects and relates the two countries. And also we're doing all our efforts with the Cyprus issue, as you probably know. And we do believe that in this area, everybody has to contribute with all the means they have. And Turkey is a big country. They can contribute into the peace environment, in the peaceful environment of this area. So I would say that most of the questions, most of the time, should not be addressed to Greece, but to Ankara. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And, I met Hanan Ashrawi in Ramallah many years ago. I think it was during the first Intifada, if I'm from. And she's a well-known Palestinian official with a life devoted to try to give the Palestinians a state. Mrs. Ashrawi, it seems that Palestine is no more at the top of the agenda, even in the agenda sometimes, no? But the Palestinians are still there, living in occupied territories. So my question is it possible to think about a real Euro-Mediterranean partnership without giving a solution to the conflict between Palestine and Israel? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, it's quite a relevant question. And as you said, there are many people who would like to see Palestine sort of disappear from the global agenda because it has always been a spoiler in many ways, and it has always challenged many of the issues of the world, perhaps even the complacency of the world, or the claim that there is a global rule of law, which was talked about a great deal yesterday. If there is any elephant in the room, it is Palestine. I believe that the world is capable of multitasking. Just because there are serious issues in Syria, in Libya, in Yemen, in Iraq, it doesn't mean that you can justify the injustice done to the Palestinians. It has been the longest standing military occupation and the only ongoing military occupation that has been a festering wound in the body politic of the Arab world and has destabilized the whole region. And of course it has destabilized beyond the region. Palestine must not be up for grabs for anybody who has any agenda, extremist or violent agenda. It must be resolved on the basis of international law and justice. This is one. I want to go back also to the issue of the Mediterranean being a very important sea. We all thought of the Mediterranean as the heart of the world, of course. It is the center of the universe, after all. Mediterranean, yes, center of the earth. And we in Palestine always think of Jerusalem as the center of the world as well. But let me say that European, Arab, Mediterranean, Southern Mediterranean relations have never stopped. Whether dating back from the days of the great empires and civilizations, you talked about the Greek and the Roman and the Phoenician, the Egyptian, the Babylonian, the Canaanites. There was interaction, and there was a common culture, and there were wars, but there was trade. And so, in a sense, dating all the way back to early civilizations, there has been interaction around the Mediterranean. But also, there is a strong colonial legacy from Europe to the southern Mediterranean. And this forms one of the bases of the current instability, whether we want to go back to Sykes-Picot and the setting up of nation states in the Arab world that has unleashed all sorts of enmities and forces and so on, or not. So we are really witnessing the post-colonial, neo-colonial situation in the Arab world, particularly in Palestine. We are the only colonial situation in Palestine, and it is a displacement-replacement policy. You want to negate a whole nation, and you want to replace it with another, what Ilan Pape calls really a substitution of the Palestinian people with their history, with their culture, with their language, with their long-standing reality in Palestine with another nation. And it wasn't our choice to do that. Frankly, the Palestinian question is not Palestinian-made. It has been international from day one. It's been 100 years since the Balfour Declaration. It's been 70 years since the partition of Palestine. This year also is the commemoration of 50 years of the occupation of the remaining parts of Palestine that have been ongoing. The Palestinian refugee issue has not been resolved at all, and it is continuing to fester. It used to be the largest Palestinian population. Now, unfortunately, there are more refugee populations. And, of course, the ongoing occupation of the West Bank, including Jerusalem and Gaza, has presented a real challenge to the world. It is a challenge, number one, for what I call the global rule of law. You cannot talk about the rule of law within states if international law is not respected. Slovenia was talking about the Croatian dispute and the arbitration, and they expect Croatia to abide by arbitration. We have numerous UN resolutions pertaining to Palestine. Not a single one has been implemented, not one. And global rule of law does not mean double and multiple standards. This is one. And it challenges, of course, all the claims to fairness and justice and international humanitarian law, which is supposed to apply to people, vulnerable populations, people who are in need of protection. We talked about the UN yesterday. The Palestinians are a vulnerable people in need of protection. But the other side of that is accountability, oversight and accountability. Who is holding Israel accountable? Who is conducting oversight over Israel? And what are the steps taken in order to have clear steps, legal steps, to put an end to Israeli impunity? If there is impunity, if there is a sense of entitlement, exceptionalism, privilege, living above and outside the law within Israel, then don't you think the rest of the world is looking? The rest of the region is looking? If Israel has this sense of exceptionalism and gets preferential treatment and is exempt from abiding by international law, this is another question that also applies to Europe. And I think many people are looking at what Israel is doing. Three, when we talk about also the rise of ideology, particularly when we talk about absolutist ideologies, which are extremely destructive. Daesh, ISIS, did not come out suddenly out of the blue. There are many reasons, there are forerunners of Daesh, and we can go back all the way to the Cold War if you want and beyond, and we can talk about the invasion of Iraq that has definitely unleashed all sorts of destructive forces. We can talk about Britain and the UK and the US, and how they managed to dismantle a whole country under a false guise, like the weapons of mass destruction. But anyway, when Israel starts claiming biblical rights to 21st century geopolitical realities and land, this also justifies the claims of ISIS that they want a new caliphate, that religion can be the basis of creating, or that exclusivity is acceptable. We as Palestinians have sought always an inclusive, pluralistic, tolerant, democratic state. Just because we're under occupation doesn't mean we can't have it. And I believe, excuse me 1 minute, I don't believe that asking the Palestinians to become Zionists and to accept the singularity of Jewishness as the basis of nationality is acceptable. I also don't believe that you can, in many ways, create spaces for ethnocentric identities, for ethno-sectarian identities. I don't believe that you can accept such exclusivity and closed systems within the southern Mediterranean, within the Arab world, if you will, and yet talk about Europe as being somehow an island where there are values and there are commonalities and so on. Everything that happens in the Middle East, not just extremism and terrorism, anything that happens, including injustice, is going to reflect on Europe and beyond. There are interstate and intrastate and non-state actors, and they are all active. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hanan. I'm very pleased to have with us a Slovenian on board, Marko Papilla. He's a former minister, but he's working actually at the University of Ljubljana, based in Piran, which is on the shore of the Adriatic, the Mediterranean. No? So we are talking about the role of Slovenia in the Mediterranean, but Slovenia, if I understand, has two souls, one which is Mediterranean, but another one which is maybe stronger, which tends to the Central Europe. No? Can you tell us about this, how these two souls combine in your foreign policy in Slovenia, and how Slovenia is able to contribute to a Euro-Mediterranean policy? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to the distinguished panelists and the audience for visiting a very much Mediterranean Slovenia, although it doesn't look like one here in beautiful Bled, surrounded by green mountains nearby the lake. But as they say, the devil is in the detail. And if you have a chance, take a look at our coat of arms and also our flag. We are one of the few countries in the world we actually put the sea in the coat of arms and also the flag. Hopefully that speaks for itself. Although we have only a very small coast of 46 kilometers and one major port and so on and so forth. But yes, indeed, we are a Mediterranean country, and as we like to say, we are not only on the sunny side of the Alps, but even more importantly, we are on the Mediterranean side of the Alps. And as a lawyer, of course, I'm very much interested in searching for deeper meaning of words, and we are here at the Bled Strategic Forum. I think there is no need to define the words Bled and forum. What about strategic? This is the adjective which derives from the noun strategy in English, but correct me if I'm wrong, but the word strategy actually has its origin in the Greek word strategia. And strategia is actually generalship, which means deployment of troops, or in modern language, deployment of human and material resources. So I strongly believe that the role of our panel is also to discuss, and now I'm going to use synonyms for strategic, to discuss what is crucial, critical, important, vital, cardinal, decisive, imperative, and
necessary for the security, economic integration, development, and better politics for the southern Mediterranean. And I believe that one of the possible answers is a holistic, compassionate, intercultural, human rights-oriented education and upbringing. Or to use another expression, the knowledge and ethics empowerment, or to say in a very simple or perhaps a little bit spiritual words, we need to educate also our hearts, not only our brains. And allow me to give you two examples of good practice. The one is EMUNI and the second one is IMLI. And although both institutions come from the EU countries, Slovenia and Malta, I think that they have enormous impact also to the southern Mediterranean countries. You probably heard about EMUNI, Euro-Mediterranean University, but many of you perhaps don't know that EMUNI was one of the priorities during the presidency of Slovenia in the first half of 2008 to the European Union. And later on, it became also one of the priorities of the Union for the Mediterranean. And it is an international institution, including nowadays over 120 institutions from 33 countries, providing various study programs, postgraduate programs, summer schools, professional trainings, research, etc. Just to name a few, at the moment, for example, there is a program in intercultural business communication, then, for example, professional upgrading program in Euro-Mediterranean innovation and entrepreneurship. For example, there are 3 summer schools and professional trainings, to just mention a few. The second example, with the permission of my dearest friend, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs from Malta, is IMLI, another strange acronym, which stands for International Maritime Law Institute, which was established in 1988 under the auspices of the United Nations, providing postgraduate education in international maritime law, including the law of the sea, shipping law, and marine environmental law. And for example, it offers various degrees, Master of Laws, Master of Humanities, then 2 research degree programs, degree of Master Juris and PhD, also advanced diplomas for non-lawyers, and some short courses. It cooperates also with the Maritime World University in Malmö, in Sweden, and with the Kühne Logistics University in Germany. And what is also important is that it receives financial and other support from IMO, the Nippon Foundation in Japan, the Lloyd's Register Foundation, and so on. But why I am telling you this? Because the IMLI's contribution to the international maritime community is best reflected in the work of its graduates, and IMLI graduates have gone on to become heads of state, ministers, chief justices, then senior members of the judiciary, national, international, attorney generals, ambassadors, and high-ranking officials in maritime administration. And they also hold influential positions in international fora. And allow me to say that many of those graduates actually work in the southern Mediterranean countries. And they contribute significantly to the peaceful prosperity and also, although step by step, because why? They know the importance and the role of the rule of international maritime law. For example, maritime boundaries, marine environmental protection, and to give you one of the latest, very draconic example, I cannot imagine an IMLI graduate, for example, to ban the rescue of human lives from the sea. So much for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving us some good examples of good practices going around the Mediterranean. I think it's quite appropriate to close this round of panelists with Under Secretary of State Della Vedova from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Italy, because as we have seen, migration is the most present of the issues we have today. And Italy is in the forefront, not only rescuing migrants, but trying to develop a policy, a coherent policy for Europe in terms of migration. So Mr. Della Vedova, what should be done for having a long-term policy in the field of migration?
So thank you very much for the invitation. It's my third time in Bled Forum. Happy to be here again. Italy is a bridge. It's a bridge between the Alps in the center of Europe and Africa. And through this bridge, people are passing. I received the last figures. In 2000, this year, we received 800,000 people through the sea. The previous year, at the same time, 121,000 people, so a little bit less, due to a dramatic reduction of flows in the 2 months, July and August. Well, we are receiving, the same for Greece from another route, we are receiving all these people because they are trying to cross the bridge toward Central Europe. Well, we can say half of the migrants arriving by boats want to stay in Italy, but at least half of them want to go elsewhere. And believe me, I think Italy did great and is doing great in order to take care of these people. But to integrate a single man or woman that arrive in your country and want to remain there is a challenge. To integrate a man, a woman, boy that doesn't want to remain in your nation but wants to go elsewhere, in France, in Germany, in Slovenia, or in Poland, or in Hungary, is a mission impossible, quite. That's why we need, and trying to answer the question, first of all, we need a political commitment to have a single European Union policy on migrations. For many reasons. For me, for one, political reasons. For countries as Italy or as Greece, to some extent Spain, the public discussion is a lot over migration issue. And we need a single European Union policy on migrations. Also because we have to tackle and to solve the main problems, to make people aware that we are in charge of the issue, we are tackling and solving the issue. And we need to focus our political energy on other issues: growth, investments, research, technology, improve the single market, and so on. And if we do not tackle altogether the migration issue, at the end of the day, it will be a problem for the European Union itself. And even, I want to say to some friends on the other side of the Alps, even for the single market itself. So we need a single policy. And we don't have, as you mentioned before, our friend Avramopoulos is not really in charge of migration. He tried to do, and he did his best, alongside with Juncker, Mogherini, and so on. But we do not have the instruments to deploy a European Union policy. We need the commitment of the single member states. Until now, we have not. We have to change Dublin rules, as you said, because the Dublin rules were set up for different issues, not to tackle this kind of flows that we are facing in these months. The idea that a migrant that enters illegally a member state must ask asylum in that state, and if he receives asylum, must remain there. The piece of legislation was drafted having in mind single arrivals, not mass arrivals. So we need a commitment to change this. And we need to fulfill, we all the European member states, to fulfill the agreement on relocation. It's not only an issue of to help Greece or Italy to take care of that people arrived, but it's a political issue again. It's a little bit difficult to explain to the Italian public opinion that in some member states on the other side of the Alps agreed to receive 1,500 people, migrants. They agreed, they signed, and now they are refusing to accept the people. For Italy to have 1,000 more or less is not an issue, of course, but from a political point of view, it's so important. And I go to the conclusions. We need a single European Union policy in Africa to be more effective. Libya is not Turkey, of course. We, the Italian government, supported the efforts of al-Sarraj and the United Nations to have a sort of recognized government in Libya. At the end of the day, we can say that our efforts, not only Italian efforts, of course, but mainly our efforts, succeeded in having a government reasonably controlling a huge part of the country. Now we have an agreement to control not the Italian border, the European border on the Mediterranean Sea with the Libyan authorities. We need European Union commitment in order to have human rights respected there, alongside with UNHCR and the International Migration Organization. And we need European Union common effort in the south of Libya to promote development and to get some partnership with countries of origin and transit. Last point, we are receiving most economic migrants than asylum seekers. At the end of the day, 30% of the application are satisfied and 70% are refused. But if we want to stop and to reduce the flows of economic migration, I mean the illegal, irregular, uncontrolled flows of economic migrants, we need to establish at the EU level new rules, and this is one of the requests that we submitted to the European Union and the European Commission. We need some legal channels at the EU level to have some people coming to look for a job in the European Union, because we need to say to the leadership of the countries of origin of the flow, not like these irregular human being traffickers and so on, but like this. We need a controlled channel for economic migrants.
Thank you very much. We are short of time, but we have time for a couple of questions. I will ask a question to Cecil Massi first of all, and then we will open the floor if somebody wants to, to raise a question. My question to Fatala Cecil Massi is very simple. Bearing in mind the situation we have in the Mediterranean, which has been exposed here by all the panelists, is there ground for a kind of multilateral policy in the Mediterranean, and not only for what the European Union should do bilaterally with each one of the countries? So what is the role of the Union for the Mediterranean in the coming future?
Of course, there is ground for multilateral vision because we have to look at everything that we have discussed with the distinguished panelists this afternoon from the global vision. Yes, there are some local realities. Yes, there are some specific situations. Yes, there are some differences, but we have to have this holistic approach. And by the way, by holistic, I mean Europe, Mediterranean, and Africa. This is the global vision that we need to bear in mind, to have this holistic approach, then dealing with the different situations within it. And when we say holistic, that does not mean that we do not act on the separate situations. But I just wanted to put in perspective, maybe with regard to our discussion or feeding the future discussion that we may have after this wonderful session of the Bled Forum, that we really have two tracks that we need to continue working on. The first one is obviously to continue dealing with the crisis situations that we have. And I just want to pay special tribute to Madame Hanan Asrawi, who devoted her life for peace, and I just wanted to acknowledge that. Yes, Palestine, the centrality of the Palestinian issue, the Palestinian state is more essential than ever. Let us not forget the centrality. Yes, Syria, yes, Libya, with one essential thing on which I would like to make a strong point, which is the respect of the territorial integrity of the countries. Essential dimension of whatever actions are done to solve these issues. So yes, the crisis, the political situations, we need to continue promoting dialogue, action, and enhanced cooperation around these issues. But we also need to build on the assets of the region. And again, I'm coming back to the fact of supporting the civil societies, the young people, the university networks, and all the different assets that we have, because at the end of the day, security is in development. And development is peace, development is stability, development is security, is democracy. But security is in development. And if we do not invest more on development in Northern Africa, in the Middle East, and in Sub-Saharan Africa, we will always be missing the true impact that we would like to have in order to organize in a positive, structured, methodological manner all the different interactions that we need to have in the region. And so the Union for the Mediterranean is one of the tools to do so, but also there are other institutions, and synergies are essential to be promoted, enhanced, so that we gather our efforts in order to reach the wanted results. I'll stop there because I would like to leave some room for some questions.
Thank you very much. We have 3 or 5 minutes. If there's one question, I can keep one question to you. Yeah, please.
My name is Israeli ambassador to Sweden and Malta. My name is Eyal Seven, Israeli ambassador to Sweden and Malta. It's my pleasure to be here, seeing these beautiful sights. I will be short and constructive.
my neighbor Palestinian leader Hanan Ashrawi, the only way to resolve the conflict is direct negotiation. We should talk, we should try again. Up until now, you didn't came with the bold decision to have that kind of resolution. You were the one that rejected 1917, 1947, 67, another time in history. We hope that this time we can try again. We will come with no precondition. We don't like, for instance, the issue of payment for terrorists in Israeli jail. I think this is the only terrorist in the world that keep on getting payment after doing that kind of attacks. But we will come and negotiate. I think it's important for you to agree that Israel and the Jewish people have the right to be there. And yesterday, Eid al-Adha ended. I still wish Eid Mubarak to those who celebrate Eid al-Adha. You should come, all of you, to see the Muslim society, friends, neighbors that living in Israel. I think this is one of the ways to see the peaceful relation that we can have between the people. Few words about regional cooperation. I think UFM have a very important role. I participate in the water meeting that took place in Malta a few months ago. This is a good example of how we can work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to close, I will give you 2 minutes, and then if you want to reply, you have 2 minutes, please. Thanks.
Thank you. The question is not creating narratives that have nothing to do with reality. The fact is there is an occupation. We recognized Israel in 1991. We've been negotiating in 1993. We've been negotiating since 1991. And negotiations have worked only as an instrument of power to buy more time for Israeli unilateralism, to create more facts, to steal more land, to build more settlements, to demolish more Palestinian homes, and to totally devalue Palestinian lives and Palestinian rights. That's the problem. So I think instead of just repeating the same mantra, why don't you negotiate, we've done this. We're repeating the same mantra that you have offered. You've offered nothing since the beginning. It is Palestine that has accepted as a painful historical compromise the existence of Israel on 78% of historical Palestine. That's it. Instead of appreciating that fact and trying to live as good neighbors, you insist on militarization, on siege. Talk about religious freedom. Who gets to Jerusalem from the Palestinians? It's a Palestinian city that is besieged by settlements, by checkpoints, and by army, and now by a wall. And not a single Palestinian can get to Jerusalem unless he or she has a Jerusalem ID which transformed all Palestinians into residents. And you revoke their residencies as part of the ethnic cleansing. I don't want to go into details about what's happening. Most of you know what the occupation is. The occupation is modern day enslavement. You deprive people of their rights, of their lands, of their resources, and then claim that it's their fault. Of course you can blame the victim. Once Israel accepts the rule of law, international law, the Fourth Geneva Convention, once Israel implements UN resolutions, once you accept the land for peace equation, then there will be peace. But so long as you feel you're entitled to all of Palestine and you're superimposing Greater Israel on historical Palestine, you are negating all the work we've done in order to legitimize a peaceful solution to the conflict. Thank you.
Thank you, Hanan. Just to close, we have still a minister on board. I will give the Minister of Malta 2 minutes to close our session, please. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think to approach all these challenges, definitely we need to have dialogue all the time. I think that's a key word that needs to be practiced. I mean, the challenges are there. We try to at least talk a little about these, but dialogue is key to try and tackle and solve the challenges that we have. So bringing the key actors together, the main players in the region together on the same table is very much important. And I think that we can't look back, we can't change history, but we can shape the future. But we can shape the future together by having a real dialogue and a real disposition to tackle together the issues that we have in this region. And I believe that this is not up exclusively and only to politicians. This is also the responsibility of civil society, of the youth, and of other actors that have a key role in society. So it has to be, yes, a holistic approach in the sense that all actors have to be involved, not only politicians, but also other key actors and people that have a role and an impact on society. I think we need to think positive. We know that we have issues that we have been dealing with them for many years. We know that we have the issue of migration, as was rightly so explained before. What I can say is that during the Maltese presidency, in the first 6 months of this year, migration was a priority for us. We tried to make inroads when it comes to have one holistic policy, one approach towards migration. But it's not only up to the presidency to do this, but we needed at that time, and we still need in Europe the support of all member states to arrive to have one policy when it comes to migration and the changes that needs to be done. But I end by envisaging that we need to talk more, not less, to tackle these challenges.
Thank you very much, Minister. Dear panelists, thank you to all of you, and thank you for the audience. And now it's time for some food, at least for us.